All right, we're going to call the meeting to order at 5:01. Get a roll call.
Chad Scott,
Here.
Michelle Dempsey,
Here.
Nancy Bertels,
Here.
Aaron Malone,
Here.
Dorothy Dennison,
Here.
Eric Palin, absent. Susan Hillman is out. She didn't let me know she wasn't going to be here.
All right, would anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda? If you had a chance to look over that.
I move we approve the agenda.
I second. Dorothy Dennison.
Any opposition? Anyone want to change anything? All right. Mr. Malone.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if you have had a chance to look over the minutes of the preceding minutes.
Jillian Morrissey, the Community Development Director. For the record, good evening, Chairman Scott and members of the Library Citizen Advisory Committee, and a happy sunny February to all of you. It's nice to see you reorganized and back on the dais again. I have a memo to read to you tonight on a final decision for the Library Material Forever by Judy Bloom that you reviewed at your meeting in November. I reviewed the meeting recording, your comments, your scorecards, and the votes on the book Forever. I would like to make you aware of the factors that I used to determine my final decision. 1, the purpose of the creation of the Library Citizen Advisory Committee by the Mat-Su-Borough Assembly was to incorporate citizens in the review process, providing a better understanding of the attitudes and opinions held in the community. 2, I appreciate that LCAC answering the initial evaluation criteria section of your scorecards for this book. 3, in the library collection development policy, the young adult collection's purpose is to provide material for young adults 16 and over in a variety of formats to meet the recreational and informational interests, as well as to support their formal educational curriculum. 4, a summary of your responses under the section for suitability for minors under 16 and your suggested disposition is below. For those of you that are on the dais, I believe you have a copy of this memo in your folders, and they will be provided to Ms. Thomas after I finish reading this for members of the public. And in there, you'll be able to see the table of how you all voted. After reviewing all the comments on the dais, scorecards notes, the MSB administrative policy, Forever by Judy Bloom will remain in the young adult section of the Willow Library. 4 members of the LCAC are in alignment with my decision. My decision respects parental choice to apply for a library card with their child, parental responsibility for the library material choices of the child, and provide the freedom for patrons to choose library materials of their interest. I would like to add that parents and guardians can view their children's checked out books at any time by logging into their account online or inquiring at the library. Additionally, the Joint Alaska Library Network is working on a refresh of their app and will include the ability of parents to tether their account to their child's. Parents will be able to review all library material checked out to their minor from the convenience of their mobile app when this service is launched. I want to thank all of the Library Citizen Advisory Committee for their service and for their recommendations. I'll provide these copies to Ms. Thomas to distribute to the public. And again, thank you all for your service and good night.
Thank you. Real quick, it was asked of me earlier, not so much concerning this decision because again, like you referred to, there's a 4 or so that approved exactly what you're doing. But did you read this book?
My job is, I am not part of the Library Citizen Advisory Committee, so I am not held under the same
Absolutely.
guidelines
I just want
as
to
you all.
clarify. Yeah, so in times when you don't go by the decision of those of us up here and you haven't read the book, I just want to make it clear that there's some other calculus involved, you're making a determination based on your perception of what was said and interpreted without actually reading the books, right?
I'm going to decline to answer that question tonight. Thank you.
Okay. But you didn't read the books. That's all.
Excuse me?
You didn't read any of the books.
I don't believe I said any of those words.
Okay. So you don't want to answer if you read the books.
Mr. Scott, my job as laid out by the Mat-Su-Borough Assembly, it's an ordinance that was passed, and I want to recognize Assemblymember McKee in the audience tonight. My job was to provide the final decision for the books, and I have done that. I've performed my administrative position, so.
Exactly. I'm just making clear that with the person with sole authority with the final decision of what the books, where they're shelved, you didn't read the books.
I decline to answer that question tonight.
That's fine. You have every right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Mr. Leslie?
Thank you, Chairman and board members. Just a couple of housekeeping things like most of our meetings. Sarah Thomas and I are here to assist the board with anything they may need. You have 2 books that you're reviewing tonight. You have 1 book in the on-deck circle that you can choose to review tonight if you wish. One of the other housekeeping things I want to mention, we're very cognizant of the fact that we didn't have quorums for the last couple meetings, and Sarah does send out emails to everyone. If you are not getting those emails, please let us know, not necessarily right at this time, but we rely on the email confirmation to establish the quorum. So if we could remind everybody to take the time to do that, it would allow us to be on a more regular schedule. The other thing I want to mention, although you have 1 book in the on-deck circle at this time, you have 10 books that have been initially put into the review process. The librarians have reached back to the patron or patrons who have requested those books be reviewed. However, to date, I do not think that the patron or patrons have reached back to the librarians to set up a meeting to discuss the books. If you have any questions, I am here.
All right. Any questions? Again, I just asked the same question, looking over the report from staff. Most of the questions are pretty straightforward. But I just want to clarify again, because there's been questions. Is there anyone from staff that's reading these books? Yeah? Good. All right. Thank you. All right. And that brings us to audience participation. Do we have a sheet? Thank you. First up is Linda S. We'll have 2 minutes.
My name is Linda Spohn. I'm quite disappointed in how you voted on the last book, Forever. Are you aware the age for young adult was lowered to 12 years old? What you may ask yourself as you read these books, rather than what condition the book is in, was more like what the content is. Does the book have moral, ethical, or merit value? Does the book honor or dishonor God? Does this book promote family relationships or tear them apart? Does this book benefit the Mat-Su-Borough community in any way? Does this book have historical or educational content? Would it help the reader have a better or healthier life? should taxpayers have to pay for a book such as this? Of all the good books in the world, do our libraries need to have vulgar, sexual, perverse, evil, obscene content? Would you give this book to your 12-year-old? I am here on behalf of the children and youth, and adults for that matter, of the Matsu Borough and its future families. I would like obscene books to be removed from all Matsu Borough libraries. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Mary Robinson.
Good evening. My name is Mary Robinson. I am a Matsu Borough resident, and I represent myself. January and February is full of historical commemorations. 27th of January was Holocaust Remembrance Day. It commemorates the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, which was a concentration camp, a labor camp, and an extermination camp. So that there's no mistake, extermination is murdering people. Among the groups placed in extermination camps were Jews, Roma, Sinti, trade union workers, Jehovah's Witnesses, trans members, queer members, anyone that the Nazi regime did not feel would be an important part of their community. Community is made up of many, many people, many, many views. I am a person of faith, and I feel called to come to these meetings. And I had an occasion to read a book, children's book, but it resonated with me. And I dedicate this to the trans and queer community, all the people that are marginalized. You, when God made you all shiny and new, an incredible you, a you all your own, a you unlike anyone's ever known. An exclusive design, one God refined. You're perfectly crafted, one of a kind. Because when God made you, somehow God knew that the world needed someone exactly like you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Jackie Goforth.
Greetings, my name is Jackie Goforth. I want you to know that the 10 books that are in the queue right now are not new books. They are books that were given in paperwork to Hugh Leslie in June of 2023. 2023, almost 2 years ago. Now, I did not think that those books had been accepted because I was told they weren't accepted. But I now know that they have been used in a concerted social media attack against me in order to prove I'm a liar. So see, someone put out a FOIA request to Hugh asking him for all of the book challenges that had been filed. And instead of sending all of the book challenges, which should be 58 of them, including 5 from Sharon Crandall and 1 from somebody from Nepal, he sent these 38. These 38 were my original ones on my own created paperwork. And what they say is, I want all of the books removed from the library and destroyed. That is true. They say that because I didn't have another recourse. I didn't know the law at the time. I had just created them. It's kind of like when Trump said he wants Greenland. It was a negotiation tactic. But I'm here to tell you right now that I'm not a liar. I will stand by those book challenges because they were put in, and I did not know that they were going to be consented and applied. When you put them out in a FOIA request, that's called implied consent. It means they've been accepted as book challenges. For the last 18, 20 months now, they should have been in your queue. They should have been done by the last policy. And that's why you see the 10 in there, and that's why they're not going to the librarians. Because once they've been accepted by Hugh, they're past the librarian stage. You do understand? Now I have asked the borough to please consider this, and now I'm asking you to please consider this. Those books were already accepted in June of 2023, because he put the forms out saying they were. Now, the book that you have before you today called The Haters, there's a section in there where those two 16-year-olds who were kidnapped by a 19-year-old adult, and they didn't even have their cell phones with them. He is ravaged in front of the laboratory. He is ravaged in front of the lavatory.
Thank you, Jackie.
Imagine for a moment if that was a girl. Please. This is not what we want in our libraries, is it?
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Kathy Kaiser.
Good evening, committee members. My name is Kathy Kaiser. Tonight, I'd like to use my time to do something a little different. Most of you came here tonight with your decision already made on the fate of the 2 books in question. So I'd like to offer you some perspective for the next book on the table that's being challenged by Jackie Goforth, Anne Frank's Diary, the graphic adaptation. This book was authorized by the Switzerland-based foundation started by Anne's father, Otto Frank, which controls the copyright to the diary Otto rescued after he survived the Holocaust. Critics of the book say they are objecting to the small handful of passages in which Anne describes sexual matters. In one, she discusses a time she asked a female friend if they could show each other their breasts, but was refused. In another, she describes clinical details of her own vagina. All of the entries in this book are taken from Anne's original text, and dialogue between characters is based on Anne's own recollections of their conversations. You heard that right. These passages are Anne's own writing and were part of her actual diary. The book did not invent the passages that some folks find objectionable. Those came, word for word, from Frank herself. Folks are just uncomfortable with the idea of seeing anything represented visually. Time and time again, when graphic novels are challenged, an image is put out of context, held up, and declared as porn. I'm sure posters are already being designed for this book. Finally, Anne's own father, Otto Frank, was the one who pushed for the passage to be included in the diary's first English language edition after it was left out of the Dutch original. If the folks here trying to remove this book from library shelves were to actually go to the library and open up the edition that has been in print since 1952, they would be unhappily surprised to find what's there. Do your homework, folks.
Thank you, Kathy. All right. We have our unfinished business, so the review of the book Damsel. Oh, ma'am? Would anyone else like to speak? Absolutely. Feel free.
My name is Dee McKee. I'm Assemblyperson for District 3. And when we first talked about doing the library, Citizen Library Advisory Committee, I had 3 requests. One of them was that we do that committee. The second one was that we change the system so that it is anytime any book, cookbook, comic book, nasty book, wonderful, I don't care, anytime any book was checked out by anyone, the notification would go to the email or text or whatever, how they do that, attached to that, that particular patron. They said they'd look into it, and that's been about a year ago. The other thing was to require librarians, when they're making up their list of books that they're going to order, I'm sure they make a list somewhere, just put it out, give it to the assembly, give it to the borough, give it to the newspaper, get it out there so that people actually have an opportunity to see what is being ordered with their dollars. The last 2 things have not been accomplished, and I'm not real happy about that. So any of you who are parents or grandparents, you know that after a while you just sort of trust the system, and you're not necessarily going to know what your kid has read, and by the time you find out, the only way you will find out what they read is because it's too late, it's overdue. Now you know your kid has had it, passed it around to 14 kids, and it's kind of a stupid way to run the system. So I'm going to be putting forth another a resolution, whatever, to say that these 2 things, which are the reasons that I agreed to form the thing in the first place, they have not been met. So just want you to know, I think that's the only way. Parents have the absolute right to decide what their kid is going to read. Absolutely, I don't argue with that. I don't care what they read. Problem is, there are those who don't know what their kids are reading, and I think they need that opportunity. And I don't want to discriminate in favor of one book or another, particular genre, whatever. I just want every patron to be notified that this book has been checked out. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else like to speak that hasn't had an opportunity to? Go ahead.
Mary Rivetta, and in the community of Wasilla and been coming to the meetings pretty regularly. I've been out recently because I've got a new job working with counseling kids at Reach 907. And so I'm going to be quite close with kids that have gone through a lot of high risk things. And I personally went through recovery for sexual brokenness and sexual addiction. Took me a solid 13 years to get over it. It's like imprinted in your brain, and you have to unprogram the thoughts and the thinking over and over, and the addiction cycle is just a long, hard road. I would wish this on no child at all. So it would be just wonderful if we could protect the kids from this, and particularly not pay for it as taxpayers. So I'm here to support the efforts that's here, and you guys are all in my prayers. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jeannie Trushinsky. I've lived in the borough for over 30 years. I've been involved in this for a long time because I support everyone's right to the freedom to read. The great thing about a public library is you can read what's in there or you cannot read what's in there. It's a choice. That's the beautiful thing about public libraries. We had a teenager come to one of the Wasilla city council meetings and talk about how a book like Identical saved her life because she was being abused by a trusted family member, and she thought she was in the wrong. It's very typical of people that are abused, is that they believe that they are the wrong person. But she realized in reading that book that she was being abused, and so she stood up for herself. And she was able to get out of that abusive relationship. Those books do help people, and there's lots of evidence out there to prove that. I've asked multiple young people in high school and young, their 20s, their 30s, about some of these books. Water for Elephants is just this amazing story. And I was talking to a group of kids, and they said, well, why is it banned? And I said, well, because there's sex in there, and everyone's convinced that you haven't heard of sex, that you don't know anything about it. And they said, wait, what? There was sex in that book? And this was multiple kids who told me this. Good readers are not reading books to look for the sex. The prurient interest that this is applying to or being incited is not young teen readers. They don't care. They're reading the story for the story. They are being more mature than this group in the valley that wants to undermine education and undermine thought. And it is just disheartening. Disheartening. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Last call. Anyone else? 2 minutes. Go ahead.
I'm Karen Crandall, and I'm representing the Big Lake Library on the board. And we just had a meeting of the Rose Group. What was the name of that? The strategist meeting to come up with ideas on what to present in the libraries and how to improve the libraries. And so when I went to the one at Big Lake, it had papers where you could make suggestions. And I filled out the part that I felt was really important to look at the community at large. We're making improvements out at Big Lake, and we're going to be developing our whole park system, which has been networking in with the libraries. And I feel it's really important to have books of quality that help people to learn, children, adults, teenagers, and to have books of quality where they could add to the development of the environment, learning about plants, animals, things that would even help them in the future, some of our natural resources, the development at whole, at large intellectually. And so what we have is a big, huge problem. We're number last of the list, academically, compared to the rest of the states in the United States. We are the dumbest of dumb. And so we have this woke system that is causing guilt and mental breakdown. It has no moral fiber. It doesn't add to the quality of a person's life. It's very disgusting. And I'm very sad to see that these books are still being paid for with our tax dollars and going into the adult section, which creates pedophile problems. And we have our jails full. And the problem is that we need to have quality within our schools, within our libraries, and think about how to develop our minds more academically, to be learners, and to go forward. And so I'm sad to see that even though you guys are going to be looking through these, you've read these books, nothing is being done. And I'm very ashamed of the fact that it's going into the adult section. So we need to look at these questions. And the value of the questions.
Thank you. All right. We'll move on to our unfinished business of reviewing Damsel and the Haters. As a way of opening discussion, if anybody wants to make any initial comments, I'm going to hold my comments. I'm very curious to see what everyone else thought of these books. We'll start with Damsel. Anyone have any initial thoughts before we go over our review card?
I will. I wrote down some comments about this book, and I wrote, I enjoyed the book for the most part. It was very imaginative, interesting. I enjoyed it. But then on pages 107 to 108, it describes sexual assault by the prince on Amma, the main character. And so I think that makes the book inappropriate for younger readers. But overall, I enjoyed the book.
All right. Anyone else? You're not required to give any commentary, but if you'd like to, you're welcome to. Go ahead.
It was interesting reading this book because she had a lovely little fantasy story going, and then she trickles in some sexual things until the end. And she, as a writer, and I've been to a lot of workshops and a lot of writing conferences, I felt like at the end she actually sabotaged this book. When she demonstrated the scene, one, it was pretty gruesome where the prince is vivisected, and when you find out that this dragon was created by the intercourse of the prince via the wound that he created, it was like, excuse me, it might be a fantasy book, but it's like, this is disgusting. I almost threw the book across the room. That was my initial reaction. And I'm sorry, this book, I don't think has any value, unfortunately, because she had a good story going and it just seemed like she sabotaged it. And that's all I can say about it.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
I believe we reviewed another book by this author. And just for the sake of continuity, I think all the works by one author should be in one section of the library. And so I think that it's definitely not a kid's book, it's an adult book. So.
Any other comments?
I would just say the same thing. I felt like it started off like a fantasy book. It was, pretty interesting reading. And then it just kind of crumbled, like Mrs. Potts said. And I think, of course, you got to get that jab in there for feminism. So, everything boils down to if we're the committee and we're saying we're trying to represent the people. I mean, yeah, people have freedom of choice to read what they want, but we're supposed to represent what we think the people we know around us in our community. And I believe that being a community of conservative, mindful people, Christian people, that, we always fall back to whatever is pure and holy and just, think on these things. And you just can't read these books and do that. And so we want to protect the kids. And I know we can't do that all the time. Parents have to pay attention, and maybe they just don't go to the library. It feels like a futile task to me, but it's has no value really. If they could have just left some of that stuff out, it would have been a great science fiction type book, fantasy book, but of course it has to get ruined. But
All right, go ahead.
Yes, so this book doesn't portray anything of moral value at all. There's all kinds of jealousy and hatred and anger and people destroying each other's lives, and it's just a horrible thing, and we're not dealing with any of these problems with any kind of a positive way.
All right. I'll be honest, my main concern, my personal opinion is that these books don't belong at all anywhere in public. Contrary to popular belief, or maybe unpopular belief, I still would not say these deserve to be banned, and the definition of a ban being no private ownership. I don't agree with that at all. My issue is that it's in a public funded library, and even beyond that, the fact that within that public library there is no checks or controls of any sort, and hopefully we can work on that and maybe have a greater discussion on that of whether shelving or not. It seems irrelevant to me. But just the fact, and we didn't really get into the graphic nature of, whether it's metaphoric or clever metaphor, lots of sexual undertone. It was very creepy to me. The parts that maybe other people enjoyed, maybe just knowing some of the narrative before I was reading it, I could just sense a creepy undertone in the descriptions. But that the literal bestiality, the sexual assault, depictions of rape, I feel are inappropriate for a young adult category. Not to mention just the negative social implications, which I think all of us should be opposed to. But for some reason, because it's written in print, we want to protect. And I'm not going to go into much more detail because I don't think that there's really much point, to be honest. I didn't enjoy it. I'm going to have to, spend some time in prayer, and hopefully time will wash the ick off my consciousness. But this was incredibly disturbing on multiple levels. Matter of fact, the only part that I actually enjoyed was the ending where his heart was ripped out of his chest, and I actually appreciated that. And I'll just be honest. Some of the other books that we read, like Identical, there was no repercussion. There was no positive ending. There was no conclusion, or no matter what people say, there was no admission to any kind of help or resolution. At least this had a resolution, and I can get behind that. The rest of it just seemed distasteful. So that's just my personal opinion. But we'll go through the checklist or the scorecard here. Most of it is relatively cut and dry based on the staff report. And I forget if we decided if it's necessary to go through, but we'll just go through real quick. Obviously, the material is in good condition according to the staff report. Any concerns with that? Okay.
I just have a quick, do we need to write our answers to this? I don't remember. It's been a couple months.
Yeah, I would recommend it.
Okay.
Yeah, because you can still differ in your interpretation and definition. but I would still personally try to answer these questions, at least according mostly to the staff report, except for where you have a difference of opinion. Like, for instance, the condition, we have to just trust that it's in good condition. Whether or not that matters. Is the topic of the material a priority for the collection? I would say no, but you're welcome to answer that however you want. If anyone has any discussion on that or wants to make a statement, how they would answer, you're welcome to speak to that. Okay. Is the format of the material a priority for the collection? Now, this is one that tripped me up because the definition within our staff report is, well, yes, it's a book, so the material is in line with the priority of the collection. Books are a priority of the collection, and this is a book. So yes, this is a book. That's about all I can say. Anyone want to differ their opinion on whether this is a book or not? I don't know.
Well, that's what I wrote down. It is a book.
I would concur. Has the material been used frequently by patrons? The staff report says it's got medium circulation, so I answered no. Anyone have a differing opinion on that? You're welcome to share your thoughts.
It's a medium to low, depending on the library and depending on which branch it's in.
But based on the question, has it been used frequently? You have to answer that according to your opinion. Is the material factually accurate? Again, based on the staff report, it's nonfiction. So I'd say non-applicable, but I don't think that I want to give a clear answer because they were stating before that not applicable wasn't an answer before. But I'd said no either way. But factually, if you have any thoughts on that, if it's the accuracy of it as a nonfiction, I'm not sure if it matters, but if you want to speak to it, feel free.
I think both of the books are a work of fiction, so.
Yeah, it doesn't really apply, I agree. But just want to clarify that because it's on the list. Has the material been superseded by a new edition or better source, not to our knowledge? Any thoughts on that? Nothing that I know of, at least. Is the material relevant to the needs or interests of the community? I would say no. And just based on the staff report, it's a very generalized assertion that, well, lots of people have lots of different opinions and different interests. But again, whether or not it's relevant to this book, you can speak to yourself. And can the material be easily borrowed by another source? The staff report says yes. Does the material have literary, artistic, scientific, political, or educational merit? Would anyone like to speak to that?
I couldn't find any. I'd have to say no on that.
I'd like to speak to this because it's interesting. Reading this book, she's got talent from the standpoint of creating a nice little fantasy, but I feel that she's using the fantasy for other purposes. And it's, does it have a literary or educational merit? Part of it does, but the rest of it doesn't. So it was one of those books to me that if a young adult read it, they would I think they could separate, differentiate the story from the story that part that's not applicable to the story. But if there are books being shelved for 12-year-olds and young adults, I think they'd be, what in the world is going on? I think they'd be confused, very confused. So I put no for it really doesn't have any literary value, unfortunately, because she got a good story going, but that's about it. It stopped.
So I'll just throw it. I wasn't sure if I was going to share this, but it's something that I picked up on. And it's talking about artistic merit. I wouldn't call it merit, but in terms of artistic creativity, dysfunctionally, I've never, again, I'm not a big fan of this genre, obviously, but, and most people might gloss over it. Again, I might have been overcritical, but it was very disturbing reading the depiction of this prince climbing a cliff, the description of how he held the shaft of his pickaxe, and the whole description of his bodily functions in the process of climbing this cliff itself was pornographic. That just struck me as odd. You know, how can you make something, it just creeped me out. Like, he's literally, I know it's got some other spin to it, but he's climbing a cliff, good grief. And then his muscular arm was the first thing to come over the cliff. I'm like, what in the world? It just gave me the ick. So, as far as literary artistic merit, no, I think it's very distasteful, but there's definitely a cleverness to it, I suppose. Anyways, that's my take. I'm trying to be as whatever. Does the material have positive reviews in one or more appropriate professional journals? If anyone wants to speak to that, I personally am so cynical anymore of what an appropriate or professional journal means. After reading these books, I wondered, well, how could they be reading the same book? They're very biased, institutionally, reviews, especially even Amazon, you know, because the people reading these books are going to have a particular slant. People that would never read these books would be the ones you'd want to get the opinion of, and you're just not going to get those metrics. So, mostly what I saw is reviews with the, varying, commentaries were relatively unhelpful, but you can answer that however you want. Does the material have positive reviews from critics, patrons, or staff members? And I think the staff report made mention of some metrics, but no real defined positive reviews. I think it was like 3 point something. I certainly wouldn't call that a positive review. Are there sufficient materials available on the same subject? Go ahead.
Just quickly on those last two questions about the material having positive reviews and the material from appropriate professional journals and from critics. What I read, there were positive, as they weren't negative, but they were very misleading. It was like, this is an interesting book. This is something unique. And it was like, no, wait a minute. It was unique. It was partially interesting, but it wasn't, in my opinion, an awful book. So yes, there were positive reviews, but when you read the book, I can only imagine only a very few people would truly enjoy it.
All right. And again, you have leeway, answer these however you want. But sufficient materials available on the same subject. We had that discussion. I think there are. I think probably need to be better promoted, or maybe even more materials created or encouraged. Because I do think these issues should be dealt with in literary terms. I just don't think that these so far that we've gone over have met the bar of what's actually helpful. But anyone like to speak to the materials available being sufficient? Other materials?
Yes, there are so many wonderful fantasies out there. This does not fall in that category.
All right, anybody else? Okay. Does the material have reputation or significance of the author, publisher, or producer? Anybody?
I think the same publisher published this book, and she's had notoriety, but that's about as far as it goes.
Yeah, and then she won an award, but again, from my perspective, that notoriety is not legitimate. So I would personally say no. It means nothing, no significance to me. But anyone want to speak to that? You're welcome to. If I'm not sure that award that she got is credible for anybody else, but you're welcome to speak to it.
Well, of course, the publishers are going to give her awards because they're trying to sell books. You know, it's kind of a circular reasoning kind of deal. They pat each other on the back, and then they pat each other on the back, and then they do it again. And then now we've got 3 awards. Wonderful.
That's essentially my main concern with a lot of this. It's a self-replicating reward system. And then if we base our decisions based on that without reading the book ourselves, and all we have to go on is those reports, you get a skewed version of published or a publisher's version of what they want to describe, not necessarily what's actually there. So that's my main concern. They're not a legitimate, unbiased review that's easy to find, at least. So any other comments on that? We'll move on to our suitability for minors under 16, and this we'll go through one by one and give yes or no answers to if we can. Starting with number 1, does the material depict the following actual or simulated conduct: sexual penetration, the lewd touching of a person's genitals, anus, or female breast, masturbation, bestiality, and the lewd exhibition of a person's genitals, anus, or female breast, or sexual masochism or sadism? We can start at the end there. Oh. This is for damsel. Damsel. Yeah. So the first question, yes or no?
I put yes.
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 Would the average individual applying contemporary community standards find that the material taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest in sex for persons under 16 years of age?
I answered yes.
I said no. I think it would scare them to death.
Yes.
No.
I said yes. I'll let you go ahead and finish.
Yes.
Yes.
1 second here. I did want to bring this up because I think there's confusion on the prurient interest definition. The legal definition of prurient interest refers to a morbid, degrading, or excessive interest in sexual conduct, often used in obscenity laws to determine whether material appeals to such unhealthy or unwholesome interests. So whether or not it's attractive or something they'd be interested in is a separate question from whether it appeals to the prurient interest. And so the term is further defined as an appeal to an unhealthy, abnormal, unwholesome, degrading, shameful, or morbid interest in nudity, sex, or excretion that goes substantially beyond customary limits of candor. So I just want to throw that out just for clarification for myself. You're welcome to reflect your answers however you feel appropriate. But number 3, would a reasonable person find that the material taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, educational, political, or scientific value for persons under 16 years of age?
I said yes.
I'm sorry. I just had to reread that again. I would say yes.
Say yes.
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 I have a question.
Sure.
So if we change our vote on the paper, do we need to voice it publicly?
I mean, you're welcome to. I don't think you're required to, as long as you have it on paper and you're kind of signing. When you hand it over, you're signing off on your opinion for sure. That'll be documented.
That's what I
publicly,
thought, but I
so
thought maybe publicly.
if you want to, you're welcome to. If not, that's
Okay.
up to you.
Thank you.
Number 4, does the material depict actual or simulated conduct in a way that is patently offensive to the prevailing standards in the adult community as a whole with respect to what is suitable for persons under 16 years of age?
Yes.
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 All right. Any further comments before we move on to the haters?
Yep, the last,
I'm
on the left, turn the page over.
one more. Did I miss?
Back.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
the back.
thank you. That's the most important part. Thank you. Suggested disposition. Keep book where it is. Reshelve the book to the young adult section. Reshelve the book to the adult section. Remove the book from the library or other. Go ahead.
Remove the book from the library.
Remove the book.
Remove the book.
Reshelve it to the adult section.
I would say remove the book from the library.
I'm reshelving it to the adult section.
Reshelve the book to the adult section.
All right, thank you. I will clarify, I'm torn on that last one. If I felt there were any controls at all within the library that may be appropriate to be in an adult section, I still wouldn't agree with it. But seeing that there's no controls, essentially, I would say it's better to remove. So that's where I stand on that. Not that that matters. Anything else before we move on? All right. The review of The Haters by Jesse Andrews. For the sake of discussion, we'll just kind of go through like we did before. You can kind of give your opinion. I'll just ask, is the material in good condition, starting from the end?
Yes.
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 Is the topic of the material a priority for the collection?
I put no.
I also put no.
I also put no.
To stay consistent, I'll say yes because it's a book.
Oh, that's the material one. So the topic. So, and then how you define that is based on whether it's arbitrary.
No.
Okay. No.
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 Is the format of the material a priority for the collection? Are books a priority to the library?
I don't believe they are. No.
Okay.
I was torn on this one, but I have to say yes.
It is a book.
It is.
Yes, it is a book. Maybe we could remove this question.
We just deal with it. I'm not sure. I'm sure it could come up at some point with different materials, whether it's comic books or other forms of media possibly, but for what it is in our setting, I understand. It is a book. Yes, books are important for the collection.
Yes.
Yes.
Has the material been used frequently by patrons?
I put no.
No.
The report shows it's a medium checkout rate at only one library.
Medium rate checkout.
So medium is not frequent, so I said no.
No.
I said it was a medium range of use.
Okay. Is the material factually accurate?
I answered no.
No, it is a fictional story.
It is a fictional book.
Fiction, NA.
No.
No.
It's a work of fiction.
Can the material be easily borrowed from another source? Oh, wasn't that NA on this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Anyone want to add to that? Not applicable or assume it could be, but does the material have literary, artistic, scientific, political, or educational merit?
I answered no. I answered yes because he had a gimmick going, which I thought was fascinating.
But no on that one.
No.
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 All right. Does the material have positive reviews in one or more appropriate professional journals?
I said no. It had positive reviews. Yes.
Where are we?
Mr. Malone?
Oh, no.
No, you
I'm lost here.
take your time.
Unknown.
Positive reviews?
Unknown. Yeah, I don't know of any.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I didn't hear them.
Oh, yeah, they said,
I said
they answered.
I don't know of any.
You're a no.
Unknown.
Yeah.
No, okay. Yes, it did have some positive reviews. I might not agree with those
Sure.
reviews, but it did have some.
Sure. I personally said yes because the Amazon review did bump up over 4. When it's in the 3s, even for Amazon, I would say no, but this did bump up, somewhat appropriate. Not that it matters. Go ahead.
Yes, according to the staff report.
Yes.
Does the material have positive reviews from critics, patrons, or staff members?
I answered no. Again, it's got positive reviews from the critics. Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, I would still disagree with them, but there were as a yes.
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 Are there sufficient materials available on the same subject?
Unfortunately, yes. Yes, but most of that is for adult reading.
Yes, and I'm sure they could dig up someone somewhere.
Yes.
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 Does the material have reputation and or significance of the author, publisher, or producer?
I left that one blank. I need to understand it better. And yes, this is his second book, and he has a reputation.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No and yes.
Yes, the author wrote another YA title, which is being made into a movie, and so I think readers of the previous book are going to pick this one up.
All right. We didn't, when we opened this up, didn't open up for discussion, and I probably overlooked that. I'm not sure if that would have contributed at all so far. We can do that in closing discussions, but a few times just things have come up in conversation or comments that wanted to add to. If anybody wants to add to or thoughts that they have on this book to clarify for any reason, you can feel free to add to that before we move on to this next round. Any comments you want to make about it or thoughts, questions before we move on to the suitability for minors under 16? Okay.
So we have a book here that's full of profanity. 440 words of profanity in one book. 440 words. I mean, it's just profanity everywhere, okay? And then the song, love your dog, fuck your dog. And if you don't fuck your dog, you can always suck his dick. That's a real good song to learn. I mean, what in the world? You know, little bestiality there never hurts, I guess. And everything they love, they hate. They hate it reminds me of a guy that was in the Middle East. He said, you know, the thing about the Muslims is they hate to live and live to hate. And that's how they live their lives. And that's kind of the way this book is.
Yeah. Scott. If I had to pick one word for this book, it would be raunchy. Other books would be lewd, obscene, vulgar. Reading this book, I felt assaulted, bombarded with the F word. I mean, they use that word to describe everything. It was very hard for me to get through this book. I felt I was being assaulted. It was a horrible, horrible book, in my opinion.
So I'll say real quick, my main concern with this is the glorification of criminal activity that I don't think that we should promote for young people or anybody for that matter. And it makes me kind of question if we promote as a library system these criminal activities as positive attributes, how can we justify putting citizens in prison for the same offenses? Now, the other complication that I had is, you know, for young people especially, many people have mentioned, like, these kids don't know and talk like this and live like this. Unfortunately, everyone else has a different story, I'm sure, but this reminded me all too much of my childhood growing up in the Valley in the 80s. This was essentially us, the stupid things that we would say, not except for the bestiality, of course. And as far as the sexual explicitness, the actual sexual abuse was mentioned before, the sexual assault, the effective rape, if it would have been on the side of a female, would be much more disturbing, but somehow it's laughed off because it's a male figure. And I think the disturbing nature of that, it just shouldn't go unmentioned, let alone the vulgarity, the language, which, again, I tell people, don't ever worry about me. I was raised with vulgarity as a second language. You can't offend me. I just think it's ignorant. And this is just a display, an exhibition of ignorance in general. So, I'll hold any further comments, but it was explicit, descriptive, unnecessary. But anybody else?
I agree with all of that. And it also glorifies teenage rebellion. Like, all teenagers are going to be horrible like that, or it's okay, or it's acceptable. It's their right to be rebellious, to hate their parents, to do whatever they want to do because they need to figure out life. I think that, kids need to figure out life, teenagers do, but not all of them take that path. Not all of them will behave that way, and I just don't see the value in glorifying rebelliousness. I mean, it happens, yes, but it's just putting it in a great light, aside with all the lewdness and everything else people mentioned.
Did you want to make any comments? Okay. I just want to add real quick, the other troubling aspect of this, unlike some of the other books, or like some of them, I guess, there's no character arc. There's no improvement. There's no lesson learned. There's no resolution. No real, their behaviors are presented as self-evident and justifiable, and promoted essentially. And so that's a concern that I would have, again, as a community. What we promote is what we'll create. And if that's the kind of community that we're creating, then we're hard pressed to have a moral authority to have any grounds for policing or anything of that. When we're literally with public funds promoting these activities, and on the other end, incarcerating people for morals and values that we've promoted institutionally, that to me is a real issue. So that's just me. Maybe I'm old fashioned. I guess that's just the way of the world today. But we'll wrap up for now, at least commentary. I just want to make sure we had some discussion there before we move on to the next round to clarify our position. Do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, just a quick one. I thought there was some consequences at the end. I would have preferred more severe consequences, but there were consequences. And this author has been known for also tongue-in-cheek. And I have to admit, I have to confess, I laughed in many places. I don't use that language. I don't really appreciate other people using that language, but the scenarios were so out there, so wonky. It was absurd. It was laughable, truly laughable. The writer, unfortunately, like I said, I would not have chosen this book to read. I didn't really like the book, but he kept me reading, and that's one of the writer's jobs, is to keep the reader reading. But as an adult, I can see a lot of humor. For kids, it's definitely not, in my opinion, even a young adult's book. I mean, it really is for adults. And I saw the humor in it, and I have to say, he kept me reading.
You know, and I'll say too, it can be laughable until you consider the outcome of this behavior. And as someone in ministry and works in the community with people in recovery, and just growing up seeing these, I know these guys, I know these people. I've seen what happens to them 20 years later and how their lives turn out and how things go. And it's doubly disturbing to me knowing that path and how it leads, and how if we're encouraging that in another generation, it makes it hard to chuckle. But I understand what you're saying. Absolutely. Anyways.
And it was a piece of fiction.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the suitability for minors section. Number 1, does the material depict the following actual or simulated conduct: sexual penetration, the lewd touching of a person's genitals, anus or female breast, masturbation, bestiality, the lewd exhibition of a person's genitals, anus or female breast, or sexual masochism or sadism?
Yes, it does.
Oh, it definitely does.
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
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 Would the average individual applying contemporary community standards find that the material taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest in sex for persons under 16 years of age?
I said yes, and we're talking about an average individual, not somebody that's extreme.
The question, I always have a hard time with this question because I work with a lot of kids and preteens and teens, and the material in the last book and this book would basically terrify them, or they would just laugh at it because it's so absurd. So that's why I put no.
Yes.
Yes.
So I will say, just for discussion's sake, it depends on what kid you're picturing in your mind as you think the thought. So it's going to apply differently, but I certainly know plenty who, again, I didn't need a book to tell me how to be a punk or to be degenerate, you know, and for those to, on top of their already, the people that would perform this behavior, given this material, it would be doubly encouraging. And I think that is a problem, but I understand what you're saying to someone like many of our young people that are, you know, innocent to this. It can almost have the opposite effect that may, you know, be repelling, thankfully, and you wouldn't, you know, think anything else, or they just reject it. But I still think it could be dangerous. So, you know.
Oh, it could, but remember the question says a reasonable person.
I'm not disagreeing. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm just clarifying my position. Yeah. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
thank you, and I totally appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying maybe the question should be restated.
But I think it's okay for us to restate it how we see it too. So how you view it and how you explain your answer helps to clarify that. We're all going to have a different take on it. I think the more we clarify that and give our answers from the perspective that we have, I think it's still helpful. But yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of struggle with this one too, because I think in some ways it's laughable, but I think that for the vulnerable and impressionable, it could be. So my overall answer is yes.
My answer is no.
Okay. Number 3, would a reasonable person find that the material taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, educational, political, or scientific value for persons under 16 years of age?
I answered yes, and we're talking about a reasonable person.
Well, I'm seeing that in this community, yes, material would be looked at as offensive, but it says an adult community. It's like from the adult's point of view, it may not. So I'm kind of putting my mark in the middle.
Okay, not to sway you at all, but the question ends for persons under 16 years of age. So it's our opinion of what's appropriate for children under 16. And you're free to answer either way. I'm not
And
trying
again.
to. Yeah, no, that's fine. I just want to clarify. That's fine.
I know. Like I said, I didn't like this book. I didn't want to read this book, but there were aspects of it that the writer did well, and I'm totally understanding where you're coming from. I still have a mark in the middle.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes.
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 Does the material depict actual or simulated conduct in a way that is patently offensive to the prevailing standards in the adult community as well as a whole with respect to what is suitable for persons under 16 years of age?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
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 All right. And for the suggested disposition, you like to keep the book where it is, reshelve the book to the young adult section, reshelve the book to the adult section, remove the book from the library, or other?
I'd like to see the book removed from the libraries.
I think it should be reshelved to the adult section.
Removed from the library.
I would say removed from the library. I felt it was so outrageously offensive, and I didn't find much at all funny about it. I did read a review that said it was hilarious, but it was so stupid. I was just terribly bored reading this book. So, yes, remove. There's no value to this book at all.
So I'd like to clarify, I do not believe that the Department of Homeland Security or the FBI should raid houses of people that have this book in their possession or burn it in public piles or not have it in public private collections or private bookstores, but I believe it should be removed from the public library.
I'm going to say remove it as well.
I said to leave the book where it is.
All right, any further comments in general? Or in closing? Closing of this at least?
Is this just closing remarks for this book?
No, just for the topic of this
Just the
review. If you want to add anything, you can, or you
I'll
can
wait
pass.
for closing comments.
Absolutely. Okay,
I just
move-
have a quick one again.
Absolutely, go ahead.
And again, This book had some very clever writing in it. Like I said, now reiterate, I did not like the content, but I had to recognize the cleverness of the author. And that's what I am basing this book on.
Okay. And I would just counter that the cleverness is what was so offensive about it to me. But I agree. There's definitely, the creativity, which makes it doubly offensive and dangerous. But yeah, very good. Thank you guys. Appreciate the time to go through that and the discussions. Anyone else want to add to that before? Go ahead. Are you? All right, we're going to move on to new business where we have materials submitted for reconsideration. We have available, I'm assuming, Anne Frank's diary, the graphic depiction, or?
If you take a vote and you decide you want to read that one and review it, then I'll order it.
Oh, then you'll order it. Okay. And then as far as the rest of from the list online, I don't know if any of you guys have that, but if you wanted to add any to that, now would be the time to bring up a discussion for any other books that you'd want to request. Is there any discussion on that? Or about the Anne Frank book? Any thoughts?
So there's 10 books that are in review. I don't know what they are. I have no information on that.
Well, and again, it's debatable of books that have been completed by the other review board and have decisions that are still on the list. We've kind of shown that we can pick them up. I believe that's correct. The books on the list, except for the ones with the current community development director's final approval, we can pick those other books up that have been previously reviewed and review them. That was the state for Red Hood. So,
a book that's been reviewed by this committee, it's 2 years. A book reviewed by the previous committee, you can go back and ask to review that.
Yeah. So as far as the ones that are on the
right, and I think there's only 2 or 3 books on the old list.
I'm not sure what list you're referring to, I guess.
The books that were reviewed under and say completed on the LCAC dashboard. I think one was Let's Talk About It. I apologize, I don't have that pulled up in front of me, but there was 2 or 3 books that under the old system
that had decisions on them.
Had decisions on them.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the ones that don't have decisions that were reviewed show as complete, but without a resolution we can pick up, correct?
I'm trying to, so there were some books that were on that list that are considered complete because the patron withdrew their objection to the book, or when they met with the librarian and the patron had a discussion and the librarian moved the book to a different section of the library or removed the book completely because it was of low circulation, and those are also considered complete to the satisfaction of the patron.
Okay, so the ones that have initial review without a resolution?
Those are the ones that I spoke of during my staff report. There's 10 that we are waiting to hear back from the patron to meet with the librarian.
Oh, so those are still in process?
Yes.
So is Anne Frank's diary the only one?
It's the only
currently
one that
has gone through the process and is available.
And it's in front of you, yes.
In front of us. Okay, so that's the only option for today. I just want to clarify. Okay. So, would you like to review Anne Frank's diary, the graphic adaptation? Open up for discussion if you have.
I'm not interested in this book at all. It's a graphic kids book talking about transgenderism, turning boys into girls and girls into boys, and we know that's not possible. So I'm just not interested in going through the process of this book.
I think the book's been put before us and we should read it.
Go ahead.
Yes, if we don't have any other choices, we might as well move on with this one.
And yes, this is a challenge book, so let's read it.
Yes, let's read it.
I totally understand, Mr. Malone. I have no desire for almost any of this process anymore. But given it's in front of us and it's work that we're tasked with doing, I would agree with taking it up for the sake of conversation and Lord help us in the process. Anybody else?
Well, we don't have any other choices, so we might as well read it.
There's one thing about it. It's probably got real small words in it. It won't take long to get through it.
Yeah. Okay, should we put it to a vote? Is there anyone that is opposed to reviewing Anne Frank's diary?
Yes, I'll take a vote.
We have one opposed. All in favor? Yes.
I think it's our duty to read it.
Okay. I think we have a consensus. We'll be picking up, if you could order that, I suppose. Any timeline on that or idea? Is it just through Amazon or?
Yes, Amazon has been the fastest option I found, and they're about 10 days.
All right, so we can probably call it a couple weeks, give it some buffer, and luckily, even if it's 3 weeks down the road, we should have plenty of time to review it. And I would recommend doing some research on top of it, different reviews and things online while we wait. Because again, the turnaround might be quick depending on shipping and stuff like that. So any other comments on that?
I think you bring up a good point. I think we need to educate ourselves a little more in these books, other than just reading them.
Okay. Am I missing anything, Mr. Leslie, that we should address before we talk about the next meeting?
No, sir. I think you're on the agenda. Your next meeting is March 10th.
Okay. Does anyone have any conflict with March 10 as the next meeting? I believe that's in line with our established schedule. I think we have a pretty solid quorum for the most part. But if anything comes up, and I want to make another remark too, is I know Mr. Malone, technologically with email and things, were you able to make contact? Okay, I just wasn't sure if there was, you mentioned people not responding. I wasn't sure if there was anything else we could do technologically or reach out, because I know I can't personally do much to contact people. So is there anything that we need to clarify to encourage that, like you were mentioning, people to respond or to connect with those notifications?
No, just if people would respond to the email.
Just normal responses?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say something. 'Cause,
Sure.
pay attention to when you reply, because I replied once, but it went to one individual. It didn't go to Sarah. So just pay attention when you hit the reply where it's going to go to.
So you could be responding to someone else's reply
Right,
and not
right,
reply at
right,
all.
right.
Those are things I'm sure to consider and be careful about. Yeah. Wouldn't want to affect a quorum. Not that I wouldn't mind putting.
So if I reply to a response, do you get that too or not?
If it was a reply all response and you reply all, I'll get it. But as she's saying, just double check that you're responding either just to me or to everybody. You don't have to reply to everybody.
Okay, I'll try to figure that out.
Yeah, if you're responding to her direct message, you can just reply.
Yeah.
When it goes down the thread, sometimes someone else's reply, you could be clicking reply on it. It may not go to everybody depending on how you. So just be careful.
Just remember, Gmail stacks emails.
Yeah.
If I can, for the board's benefit.
Mr. Leslie?
We also accept phone calls. So if you get the email.
I accept phone calls too. If you won't call me, it works.
Well, I think that would be appropriate too, Mr. Malone, if you didn't want to go through that process, you knew when the deadline's going to be up a couple weeks before, if you contacted them and let them know yay or nay, you could avoid some of that difficulty. I'm sure anybody else, but it'd be on you to contact them. Yeah, so, all right, March 10th, 2025 here, and any staff closing comments?
Thank you for the board's work tonight. We will be collecting your books and your score sheets. If you would be so kind as to separate them, haters on one side and damsel on the other, then we'll stack everything up, and as you leave, we'll collect them.
All right, we'll go down the line. Any closing comments?
Yes. I would like to thank the people that show up here regularly. Not many from the whole Matsu Valley, but I think the the faithful ones. And there was a list of questions that I thought were excellent from one of the first speakers, the first speaker actually. And I thought some of those questions were much more appropriate and to the point than some of the ones we are answering. So I'd like to get a copy of those for the board. And another comment I have is that it really doesn't matter to me how many honors and awards an author gets when it's pornographic material. And so I wanted to mention that. I could appreciate a good writer, but if she's writing about smut, it doesn't impress me at all. Let's see, I guess that's it. I just wanted to thank the people who show up here regularly.
There was something that occurred to me early on in the meeting, and I've heard this mentioned before, that parents have access to their children's library information. And it's good that they're getting that information, but for some of these books, it seems like it shouldn't have to be emailed or sent. It should be contained within the library before any of the problems arise. And I think there's a way to do it. I don't have the solution right this second, but I know there is a solution to do that. I think that maybe the powers that be should possibly look at that. So a lot of the books would not have to be challenged. The parents would know right off the bat, or there would be some sort of limitation for young adults. Thank you.
Mr. Malone? That's okay. Any comments? It's okay. So the only thing I would say, just in way of my personal opinion, as a young person, if I were to go to a PG-13 movie, then my parental my parental unit could decide what was appropriate for me. But regardless of my age, there was a restriction on an R-rated movie or an X-rated movie. So there is a limit, and I'd love to have that conversation of what parents can and should allow. In general, I would like to say parents have the right to let them read whatever they want, but there is a limit. There certainly is a limit, especially what we should provide. And again, if we can have PG-13 or R-rated or X-rated for movies and content like that, that seems just unreasonable that we couldn't do the same thing for literary material, seeing that all the same trappings have found their way into the book culture, and it really is no different to me. So I think we're way behind the curve as far as labeling and describing and controlling these materials. But I think it's fixable, and hopefully we can get together with people to, come together with some kind of conclusion that includes the families and includes adults, but also has some limit, hopefully somewhere. I just can only hope.
Yeah, you keep living that pipe dream of yours. As long as the progressives are in charge, that will never happen. But I think ultimately parents have to be responsible for their kids. And the best thing you can do if you're worried about it is don't let them go to the library. And I think too, that this, like you said, you can rate movies, books, why can't they be rated? But I mean, I just don't see that happening. I would like it to happen, it would be nice, but it's probably not gonna happen in the near future. So we just need to do our best to trust our kids, or check on them more aggressively if they're gonna use the public library.
I like to remind people that when a parent gets a library card for their child, it does say that they will be responsible for what they check out. The parent will be responsible, not the library, not the librarians. The parent will be responsible. The YA collections in Matsu are designated for kids 16 years old and older. Not 12 and under, not 12, 16 and over. And to Ms. McKee's statement, parents can see what their kids check out, and I think it'll become even easier as technology progresses. I can see what my grandson checks out. I go with him once a week. I see what he checks out, but if he were to go there alone, I would check on what he checked out. So I think a parent's responsibility is not to be taken lightly so.
All right, not to belabor the point, but I just want to clarify, there is no restriction on any material being checked out at any age, regardless of what shelf it's on. So there's only placement on the shelf, but anything can be checked out by anybody of any age, and I think that should be reviewed. Again, that's all we have for today. I appreciate you guys for coming and doing the work, and look forward to seeing you again next month. Thank you very much. We will close at 6:34. Thank you.